You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now present the Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome to the Health Hub on Radio Maria Canada, exploring cutting-edge health and wellness information and therapies, helping you to take your health to the next level. I'm your host, Kathy Biasi, and I'm a holistic nutritionist and a professional cancer coach. A proper oral hygiene routine, it should be in place daily to stave off issues like gum disease, plaque buildup, and gingivitis, but also to promote systemic health. A key part of a good oral hygiene should be flossing on a daily basis, but a great many of us neglect to do so, and this can really contribute to poor oral hygiene. And poor oral hygiene puts us at a higher risk of developing various diseases, including heart disease, stroke, and even dementia. Today, our guest is Eli Packouz, and he and his team have actually engineered Instafloss, which is the first device that automatically flosses all of your teeth in only 10 seconds. And this addresses one of the biggest hurdles and complaints about flossing, which is time. We talk about why flossing is integral for oral health. We talk about the interconnections of oral health and systemic wellness, evaluating string, water flossers, and air flossers for optimal oral care. It's a really interesting show. Do stay tuned. We will be back in just a few minutes to talk with Eli.
You are listening to Radio Maria Canada. We now continue with the program, The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to the Health Hub, everybody. This show has been recorded. No opportunity for calling in. Please do follow us on our social sites. We are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we are at the Health Hub RMC on those locations. And we would love for you to subscribe to our podcast as well. We're on all the podcast platforms that you would go down. So we would love to have you subscribe to our show. We have fantastic guests every week, and one of them is Eli. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That was a quick entrance there. I was just catching you, see if you're actually listening. So awesome. Eli, as everyone knows by the introduction, you are an entrepreneurial spirit. How did you get to this health device versus the other products that you have brought forth to the marketplace?
I know it seems like a switch from one category to another. I mean, I suppose technically it is a different category, but all invention follows the same process. Is really all you're trying to do is solve a problem with a novel device. And so I found myself in a situation that, honestly, the more I researched, I found out was all too common, perhaps startlingly, shockingly, and terrifyingly common, is that flossing is very annoying to do and often skipped. I was guilty of this myself.
The personal experience, because it wouldn't be a topic that I would just go out and investigate, obviously.
Yes, exactly. And in fact, I'm in good company here. 70% of Americans regularly skip flossing, with their number one complaint being that it takes too long. Mm-hmm. And perhaps the more disheartening stat here is that those who do floss usually floss incorrectly. Like if you look at studies where you take people and you have them floss themselves and you have dentists floss them and you come back later and look at the results are startlingly different. So, I don't know what's worse, that 70% of people regularly skip flossing or that 30% who do floss incorrectly. Either way, this was a big problem, and that affects me personally, society at large, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And that's how I started on that path.
It's easy for dentists to floss. You're lying back, your mouth is open, and they've got this great angle that they can go down to do all the flossing. It's not a fun thing to do. When I leave the dentist office, she says you should be flossing every day, and I'm like, absolutely. And it's a pain. So, I was actually, I think I mentioned to you off air, she says, you should get a water pick. These are awesome. Is your device a water device, or is it a different type of floss? And how is it different from the other stuff out there?
Right. So in general, very broadly speaking, there's two categories people can use to floss. What you're trying to do when flossing, by the way, is one, you want to remove large chunks of debris because that debris can feed bacteria. But the primary thing you're actually trying to do is to disturb the bacteria that's underneath the gums. And so the two main ways people can do this, and there's others, but they're not really worth talking about, they're not that effective, is using string. So you get underneath the gum line and you disturb the bacteria and get them out. Or you could use water. Now, water, we have about 60, maybe it's even more than 60 years of data at this point showing that water is actually water under certain circumstances, not just like rinsing out your mouth with water, but water at a particular pressure focused is more effective than string because water can remove more plaque. The water molecules are smaller than string molecules, so they could get deeper underneath the gum line, and they can actually clean 360 degrees around the tooth underneath the gum line. So like if your tooth is like a stick in the ground and there's like that mound of dirt around it, your gums go all the way around the tooth. They don't just go in between the teeth. And that is, where the vast majority of bacteria underneath your gum line are. So water flossing is more effective than string flossing. However, the number one complaint people have about flossing is that it takes too long. And devices like Waterpick, if you use them correctly, take even longer than string. So, it takes that number one complaint about flossing and it makes it even worse. So it shouldn't be a surprise that people, even though there's a better solution out there, they don't necessarily do it. I could tell you this form of exercise is more effective than this other form of exercise, but you have to work out for 2 hours a day instead of 1 hour a day, and people aren't even working out for 1 hour a day. So it's like not like a giant surprise that
Well, and our attention span is decreasing every day.
Yeah, that's certainly another factor into it. So I knew when I wanted to solve this problem that if I could use water jets, it would be a better solution. But I needed to overcome two obstacles. One is that people aren't doing it because it takes too long. And the second is that when they do it incorrectly.
Well, Ellie, when I think of using a piece of string, to me, I may be I'm obviously off base. The string can dig down and get around versus like water, which, if you've got teeth that are closely packed, I feel that the string would be more. How is using water? How does that get into those areas that are tightly packed versus taking a piece of string and manipulating down there?
So the number one area you're trying to get is underneath the gum line, and it's very hard to get fully underneath the gum line and flush out the bacteria with a string. String, imagine trying to use the string on the front side of your tooth or the back side of your tooth, not just in between. But the water molecules are smaller, so they could get into smaller areas than string can. I mean, suppose with string, you can move teeth out of the way, in some very certain circumstances. And, that could be a use case for the string. But water, when it's pressurized, let's say 100 PSI pulsing water jets, there's a lot of studies to show that they get into deeper areas, deeper underneath the gum line, remove more plaque or remove more bacterial biofilm than string.
You talked about, and you brought up, obviously an area we want to touch on here, the importance of mouth health for our overall health. There's a lot of talk now. It's all part of my protocol when I work with people, the oral biome. Can you kind of make these connections between how proper and full dental hygiene care, incorporating flossing, make that connection between our systemic health and the impact of taking care of the oral biome?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of studies on this. So definitely most of what I've studied here is particular to flossing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in regards to all the studies I've seen on flossing, the there's two types of inflammation generally. One is acute inflammation, which is a process that your body needs to essentially an immune system defense. If you were to get rid of 100% of inflammation in your body, that would be an absolutely terrible thing,
Mm-hmm.
because you need it as an immune defense. However, when you have chronic inflammation, then over time that can cause issues. It's stressful, on your body. And we see that when you have chronic inflammation, there's a host of issues that get worse, and it is a feedback loop. So, joint pain, heart health, anything related to the pulmonary system. And so flossing reduces one area of chronic inflammation. I'm not going to say it's going to remove chronic inflammation from all over your body because we have no idea what's going on in other stuff, but it is one large variable there. And I don't have the data on this, but I'm just going to guess probably the most common source of chronic inflammation in the vast majority of people. That's just conjecture, though. And when you reduce that, we see across studies that there's a decrease in heart-related issues. There's a decrease in joint-related issues. There's a decrease in all sorts of issues that are worsened by inflammation. And this is like what do you call it? Correlational evidence. So we can't say it's causal, but it appears to be the case because this chronic inflammation is this feedback loop. So we see links to Alzheimer's, we see links to erectile dysfunction, we see links to literally anything that appears to be worsened by chronic inflammation. It would make sense that if you reduce that chronic inflammation, that it would at least play a role in helping the other areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, the mouth is so vascular, and I have a parent who had to take antibiotics before they went to the dentist, just in case there was a nick or anything like that could cause bacteria to get into the system. And again, this is like on point with what we're learning about overall health, right? It's if we layer in healthness in all aspects of our health, we're going to impact inflammation. And this is exactly what you're doing in one area of health. Now, you're the creator of this. I know you have partners, and you need someone with that creative mind, but you also need the backing of, I would assume, the dental field, the medical field, to kind of guide you along as to purpose. Can you tell us about your partners and how you kind of steamrolled this into the creative piece that it is?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to. So my background is in creating products, manufacturing products. I'm an inventor, I'm a tinkerer. But, when I had this idea, I knew that this touched on many areas that were not my expertise. And so the very first person I partnered with was Dr. Ralf Raud. And I told him that I had this idea and that I thought this could work. And he's done a lot of scientific research. And, so he helped me build prototypes and to try to get a device that would work to achieve, the conception of what we were trying to do here, which is, to remove that biofilm from underneath the gums, etc. And when we had a device that we thought met the criteria we set out to do, I reached out to a number of dental scientists. And Dr. Anna Mascarenhas, fortunately, was one who responded. She's the chair of the American Dental Association Council of Scientific Affairs. And we showed her what we were working on, and she thought the concept was great, in particular, because there's actually two things from a medical device standpoint. One is the efficacy, which is how well it works under lab situations. So, you could say that the efficacy of string floss is whatever, if you use it as directed, this will happen. But then there's also the effectiveness, which is in the real world, how often do people actually use it? If something's very complicated or hard to do, you get different results. So something that is 100% efficacious, but you don't do it, like pills. Let's say there's a pill that will cure your cancer, but it tastes so bad, not a single person ever swallows that pill, then it's 0% effective. 100% efficacious, 0% effective. And so she guided us along the paths of first, how to tell if it's efficacious, and then how to tell if it's effective. Because remember, what we're solving here, there are methods that you can achieve everything we set out to do with this device. But what we're hoping to overcome is the barriers to people actually doing it. People can floss, but they don't. So we're trying to get people to create a device that people will actually use every day. So the very first thing we did was we actually tested this, and sorry if this is graphic, but the very first scientific studies we did were on cadaver pig heads, because pig flesh is very similar to human flesh. And so we would floss these pig heads, we would cut away the gums, we would take measurements, we would see how deep we were getting. And then we were able to adjust prototypes based on that, how much we were removing underneath the gum line from these pigs. And then when we were ready for humans, we actually did it in a few steps. The first was to have humans come into our lab to test the device. And then the second, and this was crucially important because this is what matters in the real world, sending the device home with the people and having them test it and seeing if the results are different. And, I'm glad to say that we actually didn't see very significant results because it seemed like people were actually using the device. And that was perhaps the greatest moment in in the part of the product development for me, at least.
When you're so cadavers are dead, obvious.
Yes.
When you're working and you're testing with live humans, other than the fact that they're using the device, what other tests and results are you looking to see as far as efficacy?
So there's a couple. So I'll go in order of importance, perhaps. Although the first two are probably equally. One is bleeding points. So you have them come into a dental lab and you poke them with a metal pokey. I don't know if you've ever had your hygienist do this to you.
Sorry, a what? A metal pokey?
Yeah. There's a little metal hook device, like one of those scrapers.
Yeah.
So they actually stick it into your gums.
Oh, that's fun.
And they see where do you bleed. So one is bleeding points, because bleeding points is a sign of a very sensitive gum. The second is plaque. We use a plaque disclosing liquid to see where the plaque buildup is on your teeth. And the third, and this is really the most important measurement, which is something called periodontal pocket measurement, which is so the periodontal pocket is a fancy way of saying the space between your gum and your tooth. You know how when you put floss underneath your gum line, it can go into your gums a certain distance? So how far that can travel is the periodontal pocket depth. And so if your gums are inflamed, that depth is deeper. So what we do is we take everyone's perio measurements before they use the device. Actually, we put them through a period where we induce gingivitis. We tell them not to floss for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, that way everyone starts at the same baseline, right? Because how do you know if half of your people are regular flossers and half of your people are not flossers, or if one group happens to get good flossers by random chance, it messes up the data. So you have people, they don't floss for 2 weeks. You come in, you put this metal device to poke underneath their gums and see how deep all their pockets are. You take those measurements, then you have them floss with the device. And then they come back after a few weeks and we measure again and we see how much it reduced, if at all, or got worse, in a bad situation. And that is the standard of measuring gum health.
Now, is one of the objectives, or is this sort of out of scope of the device, is one of the objectives to reverse gum disease?
So it's certainly to increase the health of your gums, yes. When you are flossing, what we have done the studies on is we induce gingivitis, and then we see if the device removes gingivitis. We have not done studies on periodontitis because that's far further along and usually requires, like, dentists, like, we would need a whole other set of permissions to do that study. But and usually dentists have their own procedures of how they want to do that. But what we do is we induce gingivitis. So we see the inflammation in the gums, and then we have them use nothing. We have them use string. We have them use something like a water pick. And then we have them use our device, and we see the differences in results. And in the studies that we did, our device was the most effective at reducing the gum inflammation.
Okay. And just before we go to break, is your device for home use or professional use, or is the intent for both?
The intent is for home use because our device, you can sort of envision it like an automatic water flosser that if a water flosser has one jet, they have to manually aim and trace. The issue with this is that it takes a while. And the second issue with this is that you often miss areas because you have to do it at a particular angle. You have to make sure you don't miss anything, especially the inside of your gum line. The inside teeth is quite difficult to aim at when you can't see. So our device wraps around the top teeth and the bottom teeth, and it moves around. It's an H shape that moves around your mouth, and that provides 100% coverage. Yes, and we use 12 jets. That way we can cover the whole area as we move.
Let's go to break. I want to understand. I want to get a visual of this. I had some total messy thing in my mind. Okay, so let's take a quick break. We'll come back, everybody, and we'll dive deeper into Ellie's water flosser.
You are listening to The Health Hub here on Radio Maria Canada, a Catholic voice wherever you are. To contact us and be a part of the show, email thh@radiomaria.ca. We now continue with the program. Here once again is your host, Kathy Biasi.
Welcome back to our show. Ellie, I got the benefit of a visual in our break. If you could explain how your device works with, how it works in the mouth. I had this messy idea of a stream of water coming out, which, as I think I mentioned earlier, my dentist said, you should get a water pick. And the placement of it on my counter was, I didn't feel like doing, and I didn't feel like messing. This is very compact and easy to use. Try and explain to everybody, with words instead of a visual, how you use your water flosser.
Right. So, and I think it might first make sense to explain the concept of a water flosser for anyone who's not familiar. So for anyone who's not familiar with a water flosser, you have a point, like a wand that shoots a single jet of water. And you aim this jet of water at your gum line and between your teeth, and the water will knock out debris or disturb the bacterial biofilm. And you have to trace your gum line on the front. You have to trace your gum line on the back. You have to do it in the bottom teeth, the top teeth. So essentially 4 areas. And the whole process takes a few minutes. And it is very effective. And I highly recommend people to get it. It is definitely, really get the flossing device you're actually going to use. If you hate it, get string, just do something. So our device is trying to accomplish the same thing as a manual single jet water flossing device. But remember, the number one complaint people have about flossing is that it takes too long, and water flossing, because you have to trace on both sides, takes even longer. So the way we get around this, or the way we achieve a faster floss without missing any areas, is imagine a mouth guard. Now, our first conception of the device was to make a mouth guard you put in your mouth, and then water jets come from everywhere. The issue is that everyone has different teeth, and that we'd have to make custom mouth guards, and this would be very expensive. It would be like $1,000 per person. Mm-hmm. And then, we'd solve the flossing problem for the super rich, who could probably just have servants floss them anyway.
Servants flossing teeth. Okay. All right. I'm sure that happens somewhere.
Somewhere. So obviously that wasn't exactly what we were going for. We wanted to solve it for the 70% of people who regularly skip flossing. So in order to make it mass manufacturable, we instead of taking the whole mouth guard, imagine we just take a section of the mouth guard that goes over the top tooth and the bottom tooth. So now we're left with like an H shape because an H shape is a cross section of the mouth guard. And then we put a rotating joint in between. So you have a U on top and a U on bottom and a joint in the middle. The joint is where we shoot the water through. And then the water goes up to the top U and at the top teeth and down to the bottom U to the bottom teeth. So we have a U over the top teeth, a U over the bottom teeth, and they're each shooting for a total of 12 jets of water at the teeth. And then you just pull this from one side of your mouth to the other. And so that rotation allows you to have a floss that flosses 100% of the gum line, 100% of the areas between the teeth. And we do this in just 10 seconds. So it's 12 jets. It's a lot more water than a single water pick, but it's 10 seconds and everything is covered.
Gum sensitivity. Now, when it comes to your device, can you adjust and maybe work your way up as your gums become healthier? Or do you have to take a hit of pain if you're someone who's suffering a little bit until you man up, I guess?
One of the advantages of water flossing is you can set it to the pressure that's correct for you. And fortunately, in the scientific literature, it seems as though a relatively moderate pressure appears to be about as effective as a higher pressure. So if your gums are very sensitive and can't take a higher pressure, that's absolutely fine.
Well, I mean, many people have receding gum lines, and makes the whole mouth sensitive. Is this still applicable for people who have receding gum lines? This won't cause more damage?
No, they've actually studied this. Water flossing does not increase the gum recession. If anything, it appears to halt it.
Interesting. What has most surprised you through this whole process? Because I know you're not a medical guy, but you have this idea, but your idea was coming from quick use and as you told us, people using the device. But obviously, you've read a lot of literature. You've got a great understanding of the mouth and of the impact of proper dental care. But what has surprised you the most through the process?
That's a great question. I would say what surprised me the most is actually the studies on people flossing themselves and how terrible of a job most people tend to do. Because you would think that it's one of those things where it's like, okay, some people, a lot of people don't want to do it, but if you did it, at least you would get the results. And I think that perhaps that plays a feedback, like it plays into the feedback loop of the disheartening aspect of I'm doing something, but I'm not getting good results, and therefore I don't do it. So yeah, I would say definitely the lack of results from people flossing themselves. I mean, there are people who do a good job flossing themselves, but the literature seems to show us that most people do a terrible job flossing themselves. So it's like, even if you're putting in the effort, are you really getting the results that you deserve to get for your effort?
Can people who have dental appliances, I should say, well, like I've got a bar on my lower teeth, but people with actual braces and things like that, can they use it? Like I would think if this is usable for kids who have braces, this would be so awesome.
So that's actually another benefit of water flossing and why we chose to go with shooting water jets, because instead of needing those special devices that you sort of thread around your braces and
that's a big killer of time.
Oh yeah, like if you thought flossing took too long already.
Yeah, and you've got to floss the bar itself. Really, you've got to get under the bar.
Oh yeah, that gets quite grimy.
Yeah.
So that is actually one of the top reasons or situations in which dentists send people home with water flossing devices.
Excellent. Okay, and yours do you have to measure this U shape? Is it small, medium, large, or is just fits everybody?
No, it fits the vast majority of people. I would
Okay.
say the biggest limiting factor we found in our studies is not the top U or the bottom U, but actually the joint in the middle, because different people
Oh,
can open their mouths to varying heights. And the smaller a person, the smaller of an area you can fit, in particular between the last two molars. So we actually did a study on 3,000 individuals who got an early version of our product, and the device fit almost all of them, but about 10% of people said that it was just uncomfortable in the back of their molars because that height we had really pushed the limits of what they could do.
mhm.
So what we did is we went and we redesigned the mouthpiece through. I'm not going to go into the details of how we came up with various engineering solutions, but we decreased the height by a significant number of millimeters, and now it's considerably more comfortable to fit in everyone's mouth. So this is why it's important to get the device in the hands of a lot of people before going to market.
Now, is there a kids, adults difference? Is it all the same?
So for 12 and up, it's all the same. We're
Okay.
currently doing research on kids, so we don't have a kid's mouthpiece
Okay.
just yet because it's actually, there's not a lot of data for us to piggyback off of. So for adults, there was already large databases on the variance of tooth sizes and gum sizes and mouth sizes done on tens of thousands of people, and we're able to access these databases. We're able to design something that would fit like practically everyone with, a few exceptions. And kids, though, at least as far as we've been able to find, the data does not exist. And so everything that we think would work with kids is, conjecture until you actually have a statistically significant amount of children in the lab. So what we're doing is we're gathering that information, but we're not just ready yet to come out with a confident assertion that this will fit X% of people between 6 and 8 and 8 to 10.
Got it.
We could say something with a degree of uncertainty because we had 20 kids. 20 kids doesn't represent the whole world.
Got it. Now, is this device hooked up to a tap or do you fill a tank?
You fill a tank.
You fill a tank. So one of the things, I'm thinking about, because we have a coffee machine, you've got to clean this tank out. Is there a chance of, algae building up? Is there a care for this? Because this is just getting like sweeter and sweeter as I talk to you about it. So I'm trying to find these spots here where, the caveats. Where do you have to be careful?
So I would say where you have to be careful is don't just leave water in the device and then not use it for months. Like if you're
Fair.
using it every day, it's constantly being flooded. It's like self-cleaning. You're constantly running through it. You're constantly using it. And that should be no issue because, if you're using it once a day or, perhaps more, if your family members are using it too, it's getting flushed out multiple times a day. You're cleaning the device. None of the water remains stagnant. It's if you happen to leave the device at home and go on vacation for a month and come back, then I would, clean it with soap and water and flush it out and perhaps an alcohol solution just to clean out the device. But if you're using it regularly, that shouldn't be necessary.
Okay, and the questions are just coming flying into my head. Now, one device per person. I assume that every person has their own mouthpiece.
So everyone has their own mouthpiece, but you can have the whole family use one device if you so choose. It's kind of like, how with the toothbrush you could replace on electric toothbrushes, you can replace the mouthpiece
Right.
so you can have people share, like if I go camping, just to reduce the amount of stuff we have to bring, I'll bring one electric toothbrush and then everyone just brings their own mouthpiece. So it could work similarly for your household.
And is it a charged device like an electric toothbrush? Can you take this traveling with you?
This model, no. This
Okay.
model, we are
Plug it in.
It's plug it in. We have designs for a travel version, but that won't be ready for a bit.
Okay, and the other thing that's popped into my head. So in the water tank, I know many people who like to use essential oils or have their, essential oil mouthwash sort of remedy. I'm
Mhm.
one of them. Can you put anything into the water, like essential oils, to use when you're using the flosser?
I will have to get, I have not done like a longevity study on essential oils. I imagine so. I imagine it shouldn't
Mhm.
be an issue. I know you should not put hydrogen peroxide in it.
Okay.
But that was, just a conversation with the manufacturer. Probably. If you can do it with another water flosser, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to do it with this one. But
Hmm.
I'm just going to be honest and tell you, I have not studied, the long-term effects of essential oils inside the device.
Okay.
The only thing I could see possibly being an issue is if somehow the oils get stuck in the
Yeah, clog the
hose and
system.
clog the system. But if that's the water's coming out pretty fast at pretty high pressure, it should move it along with it. Um, but there's the thing. It's you can intuit things all day. In the
Hmm.
end, only an empirical result is going to tell you yes or no. So I will have people conduct that study, and I'll write back to you because that is an interesting.
That would be interesting. Um, how big is the total flosser?
So this model is about 5 inches in diameter, and I want to say 12 inches tall. I'm not actually 100%.
So about the size of an electric toothbrush, would you say?
5 inches in diameter. No, not so it is about the size of a desktop water flosser.
Okay, so we're not talking like an expansive area of your countertop.
Not expensive, but certainly more so than a toothbrush.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have to replace the heads and what is the price point of this? I know you talked off air that it's
Mhm.
not quite ready for distribution in Canada, but what is the price point in the United States?
Oh, well, Canada and the United States are going to be at the same time. So where we are right now is the time we're recording this is we've taken a lot of pre-orders for the device, and the pre-orders are kind of our special insider community. We've delivered them the early version of the product, and we've taken their feedback. We mentioned reducing the mouth piece height as part of the feedback, and um, the price for distribution will be $199 in the United States, and the mouthpieces are going to be $15.
Oh, now do you have to replace the mouthpieces every once in a while?
So that depends on your water hardness. If you want to be safe, replace them once every 3 months.
Okay.
But in theory, if you're using distilled water, then you shouldn't have to replace them.
So this isn't even in full market in the States. I didn't realize that. So when are you expecting to launch? And are you doing North America wide, or are you going to hit the States first?
We see
Just
no
for
reason.
people who want to, get on board with it.
Yeah, look, if we see no reason not to sell to anyone who's willing to go to the website and pay for shipping. So we're not going to leave our Canadians out of this. The device would be $199, and we're expecting a mid 2024 launch.
Excellent. Very, very interesting. What is the website? Let's tell everyone that so they can go and peruse around that themselves. And
So
can they, if their interest is piqued, can they actually get on a waiting list, or is this just for a smaller community?
no, they can join a waiting list. They can join our mailing list. They can put in an order. Uh, you can go to instafloss.com, Instafloss like Instagram, but instafloss.com.
Excellent. Are you working within the dental industry to try and promote this as well?
So that is definitely on our list. So we've done a lot of internal studies. Our very next step to be accepted by, for example, the ADA is to do third-party studies, which I'm confident will have the same results within a spitting margin of error as our studies. And so when we get a number of third-party studies done by ADA accepted laboratories in the United States, then we can get the ADA seal of approval. I don't know if there's a Canadian Dental Association seal of approval,
Mhm.
but I'm sure I would hope you guys would trust our dental community here, and
May
and so
take a
yeah,
little longer here.
that would be our next step. And once we have the ADA seal of approval, then we can start getting into dental offices. which is definitely an area we want to be because, we could tell you all day, you should floss, get our device, but in the end, you don't necessarily know if our device is credible. But as soon as a dentist recommends it, you're a lot more likely to agree that, this might be a solution for me.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of the spools and spools of dental floss that I get from the dentist that are sitting in my drawer. And I do try to floss, but this just seems like it can become so easily a part of a daily routine. Do you recommend beginning of day or end of day? And every day, I'm assuming.
So definitely every day. If you are going to choose one or the other, in my opinion, and I don't believe I've actually seen a study on this. So granted, this is pure speculation, and but it's speculation based on a few mechanistic understandings. Is that my guess is that it would be better to floss at night before bed because you are very stagnant when you're sleeping. And so that's how when you wake up in the morning and your breath may stink is, you're not moving around saliva, you're not disturbing the bacteria at all. So that is a long period of time that, the bacteria just has a chance to fester. So if you were going to do one or the other, I would suggest, my preliminary hypothesis is that it would be better to floss at night.
Intuitively, yeah.
Yeah, inexactly. Intuitively, of course, I would love to see data on this. And, but there's no reason why you shouldn't floss more than just at night if it only takes 10 seconds.
Oh, wonderful. This has really been eye-opening. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody, have no excuses right now. So, look on the website. You said you have a newsletter. So if people sign up for the newsletter, then they will know when the product is being launched, I presume?
Correct.
Perfect. So one more time, the website, Eli?
Instafloss.com.
Can't be easier. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a very interesting show. I really appreciate you taking time.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you having me.
Everybody, we will talk to you next week on The Health Hub.
You have been listening to The Health Hub, hosted by Kathy Biasi, here on Radio Maria Canada.